Welcome back to the deep dive. So we're doing something a little different today.
A little different.
Usually we're, tearing apart a business case study or some piece of scientific research. Today we are looking at a sermon.
Mm-hmm.
But before you check your feed to see if you clicked the wrong show, stick with me.
Mm-hmm.
Because the source material we're looking at is, well, it's essentially a psychological profile of the entire human species.
It really is. It's a message titled Filling the Void, Paul's Message to Athens, and it's delivered by a Pastor Barry. And look, regardless of where you fall on the religious spectrum,
Right.
the diagnostic he runs on human nature is, well, it's uncomfortably accurate.
Uncomfortable is definitely the right word.
Yeah.
Because he starts with a premise that I think is just, it's hard to argue with. He claims that absolutely no one wakes up in the morning hoping to be miserable.
It sounds so obvious, doesn't it? Nobody sets their alarm thinking, I really hope I'm anxious and unfulfilled today. We all want the opposite. And yet, if you look at the stats on anxiety, depression, that general feeling of burnout, it's everywhere. We have more comfort than any civilization in history, but we seem to be struggling just as much, if not more, internally.
That's the disconnect. And that is the mission for this deep dive. We're going to unpack this concept of the God-shaped vacuum, that famous idea from the philosopher Blaise Pascal, and see if this source makes a compelling case that we're all trying to fill that void with things that just don't fit.
And to do that, the source takes us on a bit of a time travel trip. We're going to be bouncing between two very different locations.
Okay.
Ancient Athens, the intellectual capital of the world, and a dusty attic in South Bend, Indiana.
I love that. It sounds like the setup to a joke, but it actually works. So let's start with the core diagnosis. The source says we're all hunting for three specific things. What are they?
Peace, purpose, and joy. He argues these are the universal cravings. It doesn't matter if you're a CEO or a student, if you lived in 50 AD or 2024.
You want peace, so you don't have turmoil.
Right. You want purpose, so you're not aimless. You want joy, so you're not miserable.
And he makes a really interesting point here. The fact that we crave them
Implies we don't naturally have them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If we were naturally peaceful creatures, we wouldn't be constantly searching for peace.
It's like hunger proving the existence of food.
Yeah, the craving suggests the existence of the satisfaction, but it also highlights the current lack of it.
So because we don't have them, we try to manufacture them. And this is where the source takes us to Acts chapter 17. The Apostle Paul walks into Athens. Now, usually when I think of Athens, I think, cradle of democracy, wisdom.
Guys in togas discussing geometry.
Exactly. The ivory tower.
But Paul walks in, and according to the text, he's not impressed by the architecture. He's actually provoked in his spirit. He doesn't see wisdom. He sees a city of failed experiments. He sees a population that is frantically trying to numb itself.
Or distract itself.
Right. And the source highlights two specific groups he runs into. The Epicureans and the Stoics. I feel like these terms get thrown around a lot today, like, oh, he's such a Stoic. But can we define them in the context of what Paul was actually dealing with?
Definitely, because the modern usage has drifted a bit. Let's start with the Epicureans. In modern terms, we think of an epicure as a foodie, someone who likes fine wine.
Expensive cheese, yeah.
But the ancient philosophy was a bit darker. It was about protection. They didn't believe in an afterlife. They believed the gods, if they existed, were totally indifferent to humans.
So the logical conclusion was?
Maximize pleasure, minimize pain. The goal was ataraxia unperturbedness.
So it wasn't just partying, it was pain avoidance.
Exactly. It was escapism. Let us eat and drink, for tomorrow we die. If you can just stay numb enough, life won't hurt.
Which honestly sounds a lot like modern life. Binge watching a series for 10 hours, doom scrolling, substance abuse.
Just get me to bedtime without having to think too hard about my existence.
Yeah.
That's the modern parallel the source draws. We just have better distractions now.
4K screens instead of grapes.
Right. But then you have the Stoics. They were the polar opposite. If the Epicureans were the escapists.
The Stoics were the grinders.
Right. The Stoics believed in the logos, a divine reason governing the universe. Their approach was total self-sufficiency. I can take whatever life throws at me.
It's the stiff upper lip.
It is. It's about grit, discipline, not letting your emotions control you. And the source gives them some credit here. He says self-discipline is a good thing.
But what's the critique?
The critique is that it relies entirely on your battery. It's a closed system. You are the source of your own strength. And the pastor asks, What happens when your willpower runs out?
When the battery dies.
Exactly. So you have the escapists trying to numb the void and the grinders trying to muscle their way through it. But the thing that really struck me was the description of the religious landscape. Paul sees idols everywhere.
It was an epidemic of idolatry.
Yeah.
And the most telling detail,
Hmm.
that altar to the unknown God.
That is such a fascinating historical detail. It represents ultimate insecurity. I mean, they had a god for the harvest, a god for the sea.
A god for wine, a god for fertility.
But there was this deep-seated anxiety. What if we missed one? What if there's a deity we forgot and he's the one who is going to smack us with a plague?
So they built a generic altar just to cover their bases. It's cosmic insurance.
It just screams fear. It proves that despite having thousands of gods, they still didn't have peace. They were spiritual hoarders.
Okay, so that's ancient history. But here is where the source pivots to modern America. And the argument is, we haven't changed. We've just swapped the marble statues for other things.
And this brings us to the attic in South Bend.
I loved this anecdote. It's so mundane, but so revealing.
So the pastor talks about moving to South Bend 25 years ago. He rents this small house, and over the years, he just fills the attic.
He calls it a black hole.
Yes, he says he just shoved boxes up there. When he finally moves out, friends come to help him. And they are passing down box after box after box. They're looking at this tiny attic, wondering how the physics of it even works.
Like a clown car of junk. I think everyone listening can relate to that. Maybe it's not an attic, maybe it's a garage or a storage unit.
Or that one drawer in the kitchen you're afraid to open.
Right. But his point isn't just we have too much stuff, it's why we have it.
He describes the cycle perfectly. You see the new thing, the gadget, the car. You buy it, you get a little dopamine hit, a buzz of excitement. This will make my life better.
But it fades.
It always fades. The novelty wears off, so the item goes into the attic or the garage. And eventually, he says, you donate it to Goodwill so someone else can buy your old idol, just to make space for you to buy a new one.
He calls it a numbness. We're using materialism the same way the Epicureans use food, to distract ourselves.
A temporary fix for a permanent problem. And this leads to his second major diagnostic. If it's not stuff, it's idols of the mind.
This is the shift from materialism to ideology, and this is where the transcript got a bit spicier.
Right. The source argues that human beings are worshiping creatures by nature. If we don't worship God, we don't worship nothing. Yeah.
We worship everything else. And in modern culture, social causes often become the new religion.
And he clarifies, I think this is important, that causes are good. We should have causes. We should fight for justice.
He's not arguing for apathy.
Not at all. But his warning is about elevation. When a cause becomes your ultimate source of purpose, your God, you lose your bearings. He quotes Romans, saying people thinking themselves wise become fools.
And he gives a specific and, quite controversial example to illustrate that confusion. He brings up the group LGBTQ for Hamas.
He does. And, regardless of your politics, we need to look at why he uses that specific example. His argument is that he sees these two groups, the LGBTQ community and the fundamentalist leadership of Hamas, as having what he would call diametrically opposed worldviews.
Okay, so one representing a certain lifestyle and identity, and the other a theocratic governance that has historically been hostile to that identity.
That's his framing. So his point is about the contradiction. He's asking, how do you get to a place where you are passionately supporting a group that, in a different context, might not support your existence?
And his answer is
that this happens when you make the cause itself your God. You get lost in the passion of the movement, the belonging, the righteous anger, and you lose the ability to see the contradictions.
It's his way of illustrating that without a divine anchor, our own wisdom can lead us into places that don't actually make sense.
And he ties all this together with a metaphor from the prophet Jeremiah.
Broken cisterns. I really like this image.
It's from the Old Testament. So a cistern is a rock tank, carved out of the ground to catch rainwater. God describes himself as a fountain of living water, fresh, flowing, endless.
But humanity says, no thanks, I'll handle it myself.
Exactly. So we grab shovels and we dig these rock tanks.
Which is hard work.
Incredible amounts of work. Digging, striving, buying, arguing, achieving. We do all this to catch the rain, but the cisterns are cracked. They're broken.
So you do all that work, and every time you go to take a drink, the water is just leaked out. You're perpetually thirsty.
That is a source's definition of the human condition without God. Burnout, spiritual dehydration. You're working so hard for satisfaction that keeps draining away.
So, okay, we have the diagnosis. We are thirsty. We are anxious. Our attics are full. Now we pivot to the solution. Paul stands up on Mars Hill,
At the Areopagus, yeah.
and he doesn't just say, stop it. He offers an alternative.
And the source breaks Paul's speech down into 4 pillars. These are meant to directly dismantle the Athenian worldview.
What's the first one?
The first pillar is the identity of the creator. He just says, the God who made the world and everything in it.
Simple, but revolutionary for them.
Totally. The Athenians had a fragmented world. Paul says, no. One mind, one architect, one system. And the pastor adds a really interesting nuance here about creation.
Right. He explicitly says he doesn't care if you believe in a literal 7-day creation or evolution or the Big Bang.
Which is a surprising amount of flexibility for a sermon. He's like, you can debate the physics and the timeline all day. The non-negotiable for him is the agent.
In the beginning, God created.
Exactly. He's saying, if you have the who, the how is a secondary conversation.
Okay, so second pillar, omnipresence.
Paul says he does not live in temples made by hands. And you have to remember, Paul is standing in the shadow of the Parthenon. He's looking at one of the most magnificent buildings on earth and telling the Athenians,
The box is too small.
exactly. You can't contain God in a building or a political party or philosophy. But the third pillar, this is the one that really flips the script. Self-sufficiency.
The theological term he uses is aseity.
Right. Aseity. From the Latin esse, meaning from himself. It's the idea that God is entirely self-contained. He needs nothing.
That feels counterintuitive because you always hear people talking about serving God.
But think about the pagan context. Their religion was transactional. You feed the God blesses your crops. The God needed the service, Paul says. God is not served by human hands as if he needed anything. He gives you life and breath.
That changes the dynamic completely.
The pastor drives this home beautifully. He says, God didn't die on the cross because he needed you. He did it because he loved you. If God is fully self-sufficient, his love is the only truly altruistic love possible because he gets nothing out of it that he doesn't already have.
He doesn't need us to complete him. He wants us.
It's a massive shift in perspective. And then the final pillar, sovereignty over history.
This is the Grand Weaver argument.
Yeah. The source argues that God isn't just watching history, he's directing it. He determined the boundaries of nations and the appointed times.
He uses the example of the Roman roads.
It's a classic historical argument. Why did Christ appear when he did? Well, the Greeks had provided a common language. The Romans had established the Pax Romana peace and built this massive road system. The source argues this wasn't luck.
God set the stage.
He set the stage so the message could travel. And he brings it down to the individual level, too. He says your timeline, where you were born, when you were born, is designed to give you the best possible chance to grope for him and find him.
It frames life not as a series of random accidents, but as a setup for connection.
Right.
So Paul lays out this massive theological vision. But we have to be real here. You can have a beautiful philosophy, but is it true? The pastor anticipates this. He knows people are thinking, nice story, but where's the proof?
And this is where he shifts to evidence. He breaks it down into natural revelation, what we see in the universe, and then historical evidence.
Let's start with the universe. He shares a personal story about sleeping under the stars.
The Star Trek moment, he talks about being a kid, sleeping outside and just looking up. He's imagining being Captain Kirk, but then the reality hits him. Those are suns. Those are solar systems. The sheer scale of it just points to something massive.
It's that feeling of awe.
And he connects that awe to the fine-tuning argument. He references a discussion from the Hoover Institute with secular mathematicians. The idea is that the mathematical constants of the universe gravity, the strong nuclear source, are so precise that if they were off by a tiny fraction, life couldn't exist.
The odds of it happening by accident are statistically impossible.
It points to a mind. But the source admits looking at the stars might prove a creator exists, but it doesn't prove the Christian God. It doesn't prove that God loves you. For that, he says, you have to look at history, specifically the resurrection.
Okay, now this is where I want to push back a bit, or at least play devil's advocate. I mean, people claim to see miracles all the time. What makes this one different, according to the source?
It comes down to the witnesses. The pastor calls his faith rational faith, and he focuses entirely on the psychology of the disciples.
The who dies for a lie argument.
Exactly. Look at the facts. Jesus is executed, the movement is dead. Then suddenly, these scared disciples who ran away when he was arrested are standing in the streets proclaiming he is alive. And they don't just say it.
They die for it. Beheaded, crucified, boiled in oil.
Now, critics will say people die for cults all the time, and that's true. People will die for a lie they believe is the truth. But the disciples were in a unique position.
They claimed to see him personally, to eat with him.
Right. So if it was a lie, they were the ones who made it up. They would know it was a hoax.
And the psychological argument is, nobody knowingly dies for a lie.
If you stole the body to start a religion, you don't let yourself get crucified to protect that secret. You crack. At least one of them would have cracked.
It's a compelling point about human nature. Self-preservation usually kicks in unless you are absolutely convinced of what you saw.
And he mentions there were 500 witnesses referenced in Corinthians. Paul basically challenges the ancient readers, go ask them, they are still alive. It was verifiable at the time.
So we have the diagnosis of the void, the solution in the nature of God, the evidence in history. How does Paul and the pastor, how do they land the plane? Because this isn't a lecture, it's a sermon. There's a call to action.
The word is repentance. Paul tells the Athenians the times of ignorance are over. Essentially, now that you know, you are responsible.
It's a moment of decision.
And the pastor asks the modern listener, how long are you going to keep building broken cisterns? It's a direct challenge to your logic. Is your anxiety working for you? Is the materialism working? If not, why do you keep doing it?
He describes an altar call at the end, inviting people to physically move to step forward.
It signifies leaving the stuff behind and stepping into that relationship. He says this is where you finally find the peace, purpose, and joy you've been hunting for in the attic and the shopping mall.
It's a heavy episode today.
Mm-hmm.
But I think, regardless of your spiritual background, that question about the broken cisterns is really worth chewing on.
It is. We often run on autopilot, chasing the next raise, the next purchase, the next political win. It's rare we stop and ask, is this actually filling the hole?
And that leads us to our final thought for the day. If this God-shaped vacuum is real, if this is a design feature of humanity, why are we so stubborn?
That is the question. Why do we keep trying to fill it with the exact same things that failed the ancient Greeks 2,000 years ago? We have iPhones now, but we are still acting like Epicureans.
Are we actually less enlightened than we think we are? Or are we just better at distracting ourselves?
I think we might just have faster broken cisterns.
That is something to think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the void. We'll catch you on the next one.
Take care.